Hey guys, Pete Peppers here. This is my Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 10 recap. It is the season finale of Season 6, and I just want to say before I get started that this is going to be from my perspective as a fan of the show. I'm not going to spend a lot of time picking apart the story or, how it relates to the books, which I love as well. But there's plenty of videos that are going to be like that, and I would be willing to do a Q&A if you have questions about the storylines and things like that. But for this is just going to be as a fan of the show because it was a fun episode to watch, and I'm not going to think too hard about that. So let's get started. In King's Landing, everyone's getting ready for their trial. The big takeaway from this was that Cersei probably had something up her sleeve. She doesn't seem that worried. I thought it was an interesting scene when she was getting dressed. She's wearing a black gown. And it kind of reminded me of whenever Tywin became the Hand, and just that whole connection she has with her father of, wanting to be strong like him, and that whole idea, if I was just a man, if I would have been born a man, things would be so much different. I would be running things. And Tommen is, his character seems to be really completely lost, like stuck in this hard place between his wife and his mother. At the Great Sept of Baelor, we go right to it with Lorises Trial. He is, in custody, so they bring him out, and everyone is in attendance, including Kevin Lannister, the Hand of the King, and Mace Tyrell, who is Loris's father. So Loras explains that he doesn't need a trial because he's willing to confess, which the High Sparrow accepts, and he explains to him that he loses his chance to inherit and become the Lord of Highgarden and everything else that goes along with that. Then they decide to give him a seven-pointed star in his forehead. Around the same time, Tommen gets ready to attend, and Zombie Mountain shows up to stop him and keep him in his chamber. So at the trial, everyone's starting to wonder what's going on, most of all Marjorie, and the High Sparrow isn't tripping. He figures everything's going to work out, the gods will have their justice, and things will be fine. Anyways, he sends Lancel and a small group to go collect Cersei just in case. On the way out, Lancel notices this little kid, and he decides to follow him. That takes him into the area that's underground below the Sept. So we also get to find out where Pycelle was going. He followed a different little bird when he was leaving his chamber, and he ends up downstairs in the dungeons with Qyburn. Qyburn's waiting there for him, and he explains to him, even though he doesn't hate him, he has no ill will, he needs him to go. And if you're wondering why that is, it's because Pycelle is on the small council, and they need to get rid of all of the members in order to achieve a transfer of power. So Pycelle gets stabbed to death by the little birds, and got to give him credit. At least he got in one shot before it was all said and done. So Lancel gets himself stabbed, and we realize that he is downstairs in the area where the Mad King had stashed all that wildfire from Bran's visions. He realizes this too, and as far as the wildfire scene goes, I think we just need to watch it again. So take that, King's Landing. I was hoping that this would happen, and it was a pretty awesome scene. Cersei destroys all of her immediate enemies in an instant, and shockingly, Tommen doesn't die as collateral damage. Cersei continues to rampage, and she has Septa Unella, and she basically waterboards her with some wine, tells her why she does what she does. It's basically because she enjoys it, and then she gives her to the mountain. This is I mean, it's just an example of, I guess, the depravity that Cersei has reached. I don't know what else to say. Um, so I'll just leave it at that. So we cut back to Tommen, and look, he's still alive. Can you believe he's still alive? Ask your friends in the room. I can't believe Tommen made it out alive. Anyways, he's looking over the carnage, and he's still alive. It's a big surprise. But then he sort of takes off his crown, walks off screen, and yeah, he jumps out the window, and, well, rest in peace, Tommen. We go to the twins, and Walder and Jamie have sort of a heated conversation. They exchange a bunch of japes. Jamie calls him out for not really being a warrior, and Walder points out that, hey, the point of fighting is to defeat your enemies, and Jamie counters that with the fact that Walder is pretty much useless, and they had to use the Lannisters, and, so on and so forth. So Samwell actually makes it to Old Town, which is pretty exciting because in the books this is something that's something I'm waiting to find out what's going to happen. Although I'm going to book a nerd out a little bit here. They took out some major stuff. Like most of the reasons why it is interesting is all related to characters who are on the show. But anyways, there's a little funny scene where he talks to the guy and they don't know why he's there, and then we get to see this cool ass scene of the library, and like, even if it doesn't live up to what it was in the books, there's still a lot of potential here for the show. In the north, Melisandre gets called out for burning Shireen at the stake. Davos is pissed, and he wants Jon to kill her, or he wants to kill her himself. He wants something to happen that involves Melisandre getting killed. And Melisandre argues that she has been ready to die for several years if the Lord of Light was done with her, but he is not, and she could really help out. And Jon just sort of splits the difference and sends her away. Um, I think it's important to remember that they showed us in the first episode of this season, I think it was, that she's just wearing a glamour that makes her look like she does. So, she could definitely just go around the corner, take off her choker, be the old woman, and still be around. I mean, I don't think this is the end of her involvement, and I mean, she brought Jon back from the dead, so she's still going to be an important character in one way or another. Jon and Sansa basically make up. They have a conversation about they need to trust each other, and they both apologize for not doing so, and they talk about, like, who's in charge. Jon says, I'm not a Stark, and Sansa says, you are to me. He also brings up the idea about trusting Littlefinger, and she makes it pretty clear that she knows that no one should trust Littlefinger, which is good. And they have a pretty cool scene. I thought it was all right. She says that the White Raven came and winter is here, and he mentions, well, Father always said it was coming, and they both smile. And I don't know. I mean, you have to be pretty jaded if you didn't enjoy that as as far as how the TV series has played out. We get some Dorne. Lady Olenna, Queen of Thorns, is there. She's meeting with the Sand Snakes, who basically, I guess, are in charge. But yeah, she's complaining. She's upset. She has a lot of reasons to be. And we find out Varys is there, and so basically, long story short, on Dorne, it looks like they're just going to be on Dany's side. Speaking of Dany, she's in Marine getting ready to leave, and she has to break up with Dario first, her paramour. If you're wondering, like, if he's important or not, I mean, he in both the books and the show, she really does care about him, and more so in the books. That's pretty much her thing is Dario. I mean, she gets married to other people and whatnot, but she does actually prefer him as her lover. So Tyrion tries to comfort her, console her, whatever you want to say, about the situation, and she basically points out that he's not very good at that, but she doesn't need him for that. And she goes ahead and makes him Hand of the Queen. And it's actually not a bad choice, even though she doesn't really know much about it. He was a good Hand of the King in the books, And even though the show didn't go into it that much, it is a good choice. Also, I think what was interesting about that conversation was, he just basically lays it out. You have everything you wanted. You got your ships, you got your army, you got your dragons. Let's go do this thing. So then we get some Frey pie. If you're not familiar with the Frey pie theory, it was basically on different characters. The Manderly supposedly, killed some Freys and fed them to some other Freys. But in this is the show's version of it, and we see that we got this new character here, but oh wait, it's not actually a new character. It's actually Arya, and she's wearing a face, and she's basically become a faceless man, and she proceeds to kill Walder Frey. And I actually mentioned this in my preview for this episode, that I thought this was going to happen based on the way that the show had been, doing its storylines, and I was satisfied to see it. I mean, obviously there's some problems in how this would all go down, but hey, Walder Frey's dead and Arya's back in Westeros, so it's all right with me. We get a little exchange with Sansa and Littlefinger where he tells her his dream is to be on the Iron Throne with her by his side. Then he tries to kiss her and she shuts him down. He goes on to sort of threaten her and point out, what happened and what he's done, so on. And she basically says that she's not. She kind of indicates that she's really not afraid of him. But there's obviously tension that's going to be there from now on through the rest of their relationship. We make it beyond the wall, and we find Benjen and Bran parting ways. Benjen explains that he can't go south of the wall, but it's time for Bran to do that, and it looks like they end up in the Weirwoods where Jon took his vow. And Benjen says he'll still fight for the living, but he just can't go along with them. So Bran decides to hook up with the Weirwood tree, and he decides to also pay off the thing that everybody's been waiting for, and that is Jon Snow's parentage. We see him outside the Tower of Joy follow Ned up the stairs, and he finds his sister Lyanna in bed, and she's really happy to see him. Problem is, she's dying. She just gave birth, and she's going to die as a result. So there's a little bit of time where he tries to, give her some hope, and she basically says, no, that's not important, and goes on to tell him who the baby is. So if you've never really paid attention to theories and things like that, this is the R plus L equals J theory. Rhaegar Targaryen plus Lyanna Stark equals Jon Snow. If you're not sure what that is, just look it up. R plus L equals J, and you'll find lots of information. She whispers in his ear. You can't exactly hear what she's saying. She says the baby's name. She says that Robert Baratheon, who she was betrothed to, will kill him if he finds out. And she asked Ned to please take care of the child. So basically, Ned takes him back, and he calls him Jon Snow. The name I think that it probably is, from what I've read, it's probably Jaehaerys, which is another Targaryen king, which I won't go into right now, but that would be a good name. And obviously Ned has to change the name to protect him because any Targaryen heir would be a threat and therefore couldn't be allowed to live. So if you're wondering if there's any different interpretation of this, I really don't think so. I think it's just saying that Jon Snow is a Targaryen born from Lyanna Stark. And in case you're wondering, that makes Daenerys actually his aunt, because Rhaegar Targaryen was her oldest brother. So that was the big reveal, right? Well, there's more. Jon's in the north. He's got everybody together in the Great Hall of Winterfell, and they're kind of discussing what's going to happen in a post-Bolton world. The Knights of the Vale aren't feeling the wildlings, and half of the people in this room weren't on Jon's side. They actually, were behind the Boltons. So nobody really knows what's going to happen. They're trying to figure it out. Most of the families just kind of want to go and pretend like it never happened. But for the third episode in a row, Lyanna Mormont steps up to steal the show. And she goes ahead and basically calls everybody out, calls the other houses out for not standing behind Winterfell and the Starks. And somewhat out of nowhere, uh, crowns Jon the King of the North, or at least she declares that, and everybody decides to go along with it. Now, that is the families that didn't go along with him in the first place, like the Manderleys, the Glovers, the Serwins, and also the Knights of the Vale. And the only person that really seems to have a problem with the whole situation is Littlefinger. So we get back to King's Landing. Jaime came back to town to find everything in chaos, and Cersei basically hatches a plan where she ends up taking the Iron Throne. Now, this is only really a political situation. She basically did set this up. Qyburn would be the hand. Everyone else that could have opposed her right away, immediately, is dead. So, voila, you're on the throne. That being said, there really is no one behind her, so even though she's there right now, she'll have to fight for anything that she wants to be able. I mean, any chance of her being able to keep it would be, she's going to have to do a little bit more than just pronounce herself Queen Cersei first of her name. And we end things out with some pretty amazing looking scenes of Dany and her fleet sailing towards Westeros. Varys is back. The first time I watched it, I didn't even notice that he was there. He was in Dorne, and then he was there. But she's got her dragon, she's got her boats, and she's on her way. So, in closing, so much stuff happened. So many different things got paid off. The show is not the books, and the books are not the show. But as far as things go, this was a pretty freaking amazing episode of the show. Like I said, I didn't want to nitpick and tear it apart. There's plenty of videos out there, I'm sure, that will do that for you. But let's just enjoy for what it is. It was, there was so many different things. I was looking forward to seeing if some of my predictions were going to come true, and like all of them did. And then there were ones I didn't even expect, like Cersei taking the throne, and it was surprising to see all this stuff play out in the same episode. And yeah, they're in a hurry. There's not many episodes left after this. But when I was watching it, I was just really into it. And I don't think that I guess maybe it's not like I'm settling for it. It's not like, but I have just sort of tried to pay attention to what the show's doing and enjoy it for being the show. And this episode I was pretty excited about. So I hope you'll like the video and subscribe to my channel. I'll be making a few new ones this week. I've been working on season 7 predictions, and waiting for the Winds of Winter to come out, the book, so that I can do some Song of Ice and Fire stuff. And hope that I'll have probably like one or two per week in the time in between now and next season. So I'll be talking to you soon.